Welcome to another episode of the Dissection. The budget framework has passed, and this means that VAT is going up on the 1st of May. Make no mistake about it. All of the rhetoric around the Minister of Finance must find recommendations, etc., is going to amount to naught. The fact that the fiscal framework was adopted without amendments means that the VAT increases in that particular fiscal framework are locked in. The next vote is in June. So the discourse around recommendations and everything connected to that is that within 30 days, the minister must come and say what alternatives he found to a value-added tax increase and to avoiding the tax bracket creep. He can come back after 30 days and say, I've got no alternatives. In fact, everything indicates that he's likely to do that. The minister wanted 2%. The DA brought him down significantly. And then now he's split a 1% into two. Half this year and then another half next year to make 1 percentage point increase. It's very unlikely that somebody who has gone gung-ho for an increase would go against it at this particular late stage of the game. He wants to raise the revenue. This is how he thinks he's going to raise the revenue. And it seems as if all of this is just a method of manufacturing consent. Manufacturing consent is something that you need to understand and be familiar with. And it's one of the big topics that we'll be discussing in our book dissection book lab, the members only book club, where we look at big books, big issues, current affairs, global affairs topics from a research-based framework, looking at what various authors who are experts on the fields have said about those particular books and exploring them further. So we will be looking at manufacturing consent. The next book that we're going to be looking at is The Stellenbosch Mafia by Peter du Toit. And then we're also going to look at the other book which goes with this, ANC Billionaires, also by Peter du Toit, to contrast how he's positioning this book versus that book. So the book club is live now. You can join it on Mighty Jamie TV on YouTube. And we are going to be doing more book dissections. Look out for great discussions. Once we cross over 100, we'll also try to have the dissection discussions happening via Zoom with members who are reading the books, actually contributing and sharing their thoughts and inputs. It's for growing our understanding, growing our thoughts. So back to the conversation about the budget. The National Assembly has voted to adopt the 2025 budget framework with a narrow majority. The final tally of the vote was 194 for and 182 against, with 0 abstentions. The ANC voted with most of the Government of National Unity members in alignment with them. However, the Democratic Alliance and the Freedom Front Plus rejected it. To secure a majority, the ANC got some support from outside of the GNU, including ActionSA and Build One South Africa. ActionSA led by Herman Mashaba, Build One South Africa led by Mmusi Maimane. The markets have been reacting. Let's look at how the US dollar performed. The US dollar is trading at 1884 to the rand. This is a weakening which happened mostly today, and we'll have to see if that trend continues into tomorrow. We can eliminate this being as a result of the strengthening of the US dollar, because the US dollar is actually doing poorly compared to other currencies such as the EU currency as well as the British pound. So it's only doing stronger today versus the rand, which means that the impact is coming mostly from the rand. We can also look at the bond yields, which are a measure of the return an investor can expect from a bond investment. The South African bond yields today went up by 0.52%. So what we're seeing is the dollar becoming stronger, the rand falling. We're seeing bond yields going up. Just a little bit of a discussion on bond yields. A bond yield is a type of fixed income investment where an investor lends money to a borrower, typically a corporation or a government, in exchange for regular interest payments and the eventual return of the principal amount. Bonds are debt securities issued to raise capital for various purposes, such as financing projects and or operations. They represent the annual income earned from bond yields. They represent the annual income earned from the bond expressed as a percentage of its current market price. Bond yields are crucial for evaluating the attractiveness of a bond compared to other investments and for assessing the risk associated with it. A higher bond yield means the following for a government that issues those particular bonds. Number one, increased borrowing costs. Higher yields mean that the governments must pay more to borrow money. This can lead to increased costs for financing public projects and managing national debt. The economic outlook, right? It means that the economic outlook has shifted. Rising yields often reflect investor expectations about future economic conditions, including inflation and interest rates. Higher yields can signal concerns about economic growth, inflation, or fiscal policies. Also, a higher bond yield can reflect lower investor confidence. Changes in bond yields can reflect investor confidence in the government's ability to manage its finances. Higher yields might indicate reduced confidence or increased risk perception. So we know from today that the rand weakened, which in and of itself is an indicator of market sentiment and people's view of the strength of the South African government to deliver its objectives and policies and all of that jazz. As well, the bonds went up. The bond yields went up. The Democratic Alliance has issued a statement. They have said that they will be filing papers in the Western Cape High Court to challenge Parliament's passing of the 2026 national budget. They said that it is unthinkable that ActionSA has handed this VAT increase to the ANC on a platter and is both unlawful and unconstitutional how Parliament processed the budget. ActionSA and the ANC were joined in passing this VAT budget by IFP, PA, Good, Rise Mzansi, UDM, Patriotic Alliance, Aljama, and Build One South Africa, who collectively have chosen to make life more expensive for South Africans. The DA says they vehemently oppose the finance minister's budget proposal and have negotiated for amendments that would have ensured economic growth and job creation, because this is what South Africa needs. So they are saying their court challenge rests on two grounds. Number one, the DA challenges the procedure of the Finance Committee on the 1st of April 2025 to consider and approve the fiscal framework. And number two, the DA challenges the constitutionality of certain revenue collection and expenditure measures becoming binding through a speech by the finance minister without Parliament having to consider, oversee, or approve them. So that's what the Democratic Alliance has said in response to events happening today. And it looks like they're packing their bags. It looks like they're about to leave the government of national unity. There was also a leaked Ramaphosa recording, which has been circulating in the media. And basically, this is what the leaked recording had to say.
Sometimes I often say that you must not interrupt your adversary whilst they're making a mistake. The DA have locked themselves into an unenviable position. And they can now see that they put themselves into a cul-de-sac. It is a most unpleasant position that they've locked themselves into. This evening, John Steenhuisen made contact with me and said, "Where do we go now?" And I said, "John, the ball is entirely in your court." And he asked, does the ANC say we should leave the GNU? I said, the ball is in your court. You have put yourself in this position. So you need to work your way out. You took a decision in the committee. That was the choice you made. And you tried to argue that the position that was adopted is no different from the position that they had put up in either cabinet or outside. And I said, the reason why the ANC, through our chief whip, embarked on a process of consulting all parties, as we did when we formed the GNU, was to show leadership. We are the ones, whether you like it or not, who are leading this GNU. And we therefore have a responsibility to demonstrate that leadership. Even under difficult circumstances or situations, we will continue to do so. And that is why our chief whip and the various comrades of his other colleagues embark on this process of consulting with all parties. And I said to him, you as a party, of course, of the GNU, you were singular in saying you will oppose this budget, and you added insult upon insult towards the ANC and called the ANC all manner of names. And I said, what seems to please you is that you want to be in government and you also want to be the opposition in government. And I said, you can't have your cake and eat it. So I said, you've already optically given us a clear indication of where you stand in the committee. Now you need to take a decision about tomorrow. And that will define exactly where you stand. So the approach we should take is a tactical one. And of course, in the end, I think this may well be the point where, as the DP says, yes, the end of their participation, because they are defining themselves out of the GNU, and it will be clear tomorrow what decision they take. And obviously, I even said to him, you said, if we work with other parties, that's the end of the GNU. And I said, well, maybe you will live up to that yourself, because that's exactly what you have wished for. You have, and I said, the ActionSA and the other parties took a much more cooperative and practical type of disposition. And you came with a document. And of course, so you all know, and we'll cover this on Thursday, there have been discussions that have been going on the various other issues that they have raised, which are now going to forfeit. So I was just saying that is the general approach, but in the end, they have put themselves in a difficult position, and therefore tomorrow it's their choice, and that choice is going to have consequences. And I think rather than us now, and that's what I was trying to call you about deeply.
Well, let me give you some thoughts about this particular voice note. I don't think that this voice note leaked. I think this voice note was circulated as part of political communications, which is being done by the ANC and being done by the Ramaphosa camp to manage everything that happened today. It was the president giving his explanation for how things have gone down, and also it was the president preparing the ground for what is likely to happen in the coming weeks, maybe days, maybe months, which is the departure of the Democratic Alliance from this coalition arrangement. So this is a soft launch of a new coalition, if you will. And this is sometimes what people do in professional communications and public relations. They give a version, they prepare you for what's likely to happen so that when it does happen, everyone can say, well, you're not shocked, you knew it was coming, etc. I think this is exactly what is happening here. Number two, I think that there's potentially a cabinet reshuffle down the road. It will be difficult for the DA to stay in this coalition while they're taking their own government to court, while they're voting against their own fiscal framework. It's going to be difficult for them, especially after the president has made it clear how he feels about them. And also after all of the shenanigans that have played out right now have played out in the way they have. It was interesting to observe Gayton McKenzie and Stella Abrahams heckling the Democratic Alliance. These are government ministers, and they were rubbishing their coalition partners. This is beginning to look like that relationship where someone has overstayed their welcome. You know, at the nightclubs, when they start playing 80s music, it's not time to reminisce. They're not actually trying to do an old school session. No, it's time to go. If you hear Dolly Parton, you need to leave. If you hear Ashanti, you need to leave. It's not time. It's time to go. You know, there's an old song. Jaivanga tumenyiwe, aumenywanga. Jaivanga tumenyiwe, aumenywanga. Which is like, you're dancing like you're still invited or you were invited. You need to aumenywanga. This is how the mood is feeling towards the Democratic Alliance from people within the GNU right now and people around the GNU in terms of ActionSA and others saying, no, you messed up, you over-negotiated, etc., etc. It's been interesting to also see which media journalists have been supporting the narratives that are coming out of the ANC, because fundamentally the main narrative should be the VAT is going up. That should be the main narrative. That is something that is going to negatively affect everybody. The cost of goods, the cost of services are going up. Electricity is already high. Tariffs are already high. People were telling me that ShopRite and other places have already increased prices, and then they're going to increase them again when the VAT goes up. Can you see how this can have a negative impact on ordinary people? Anyway, that's where things stand. If there is a cabinet reshuffle, who would come into this new cabinet? I think Musi Maimane might be given Minister of Basic Education. This is something that he has said he cares about deeply. There are big problems in the basic education system. Siviwe Horube just basically said she's going to fix pit latrines and that's it. So there could be something in it for him there. And he may feel that that was good enough for him to support this particular budget, in addition to calling for the recommendations. And remember, ActionSA and Build One South Africa have said they still have the option later to not support the Division of Revenue Bill and other bills which are coming up in June. So they've said that they retain that right and they may not support those later. So Musi Maimane might be given Minister of Basic Education. Look, if he can fix basic education, he probably will save everybody a lot of problems and actually reduce the cost of living, because one of the biggest costs of living is the price of private schools, etc., for those who have to send or choose to send their kids to those type of institutions. You improve that downstream, you increase the tax base, because a lot of people drop out. A lot of people don't even get grades good enough to go to TVETs, good enough to go to universities. We've seen that unemployment is significantly lower for people with some tertiary education, lower for people with degrees and certificates and diplomas, etc. So it may be why he chose to make that particular decision. Herman Mashaba might be given Minister of Home Affairs. He is the main target of the anger of the Democratic Alliance. This is the second time that ActionSA has found a way to push out the Democratic Alliance. First was Tshwane, where they got in Nasipi Moya as mayor of Tshwane, and they removed Celia Sprink. And the DA is fuming still about that. And now it seems as if they may be able to push out the Democratic Alliance from the government of national unity, and there may be a very new government of national unity. What do you guys think about these decisions that have been made by Build One South Africa, by ActionSA in respect to this, right? If Herman Mashaba comes into the cabinet, he might be given Minister of Home Affairs, right? Because he's something that he has been speaking about quite, consistently. He's very anti-immigration, very strong on immigration policies. And some people have even said that he goes into the terrain of Donald Trump and xenophobia and all of that. And for him to get that portfolio with some of the sentiments that exist on the ground, it would actually be advantageous for him, because one, he can out Bahambe, what's his name? Gayton McKenzie, because Gayton McKenzie now is Mr. Abahambe. But if Herman Mashaba gets that, then he can become the minister of Abahambe over Gayton McKenzie, who will still be in sports. So it would be advantageous for him electorally, because this campaign approach has contributed to many successful campaigns in the UK, in the EU, in USA. It helped ActionSA actually get on the map in the last local government elections in a major way, where they got about 500,000 votes. They dropped a little bit in the last election, partly because of being in the Moonshot Pact, partly because they softened some of their immigration tone, and Herman and Gayton McKenzie and others were able to out Abahambe, Herman Mashaba. So he may be going back to those Abahambe roots, and this could be something that he thinks will give his party longevity and popularity on the ground and resuscitate its aspirations. That may also feel like something that the ANC is willing to do, because they can work and are working with ActionSA as things stand right now. So they may feel that, hey, we can do this deal with this guy and make it work. So that's where things stand right now. Who do you think would come into the cabinet? Who do you want to be in the cabinet? Are you angry about the increase in VAT? Because it's coming. That's why all of these insurance companies, banks, etc. are sending the email, because they read the legislation. They understand that recommendations have no binding authority. A parliamentary committee is not the office of the public protector. So when they say, no, we're doing recommendations, strict recommendations, they don't have the capacity to enforce any of their recommendations in law. What is given capacity in law is the power to amend. They didn't amend. What is given capacity to law is the fiscal framework. The minister then comes later and says, hey, the law empowers me. I've done this, I've done that, and now I'm raising VAT. Let's go. I don't think there's going to be any change. Just imagine 30 days from now, the minister comes and says, no, it's too late now. Companies have already prepared, etc., etc. It's manufacturing consent. It's manufacturing consent. That's what's going to happen. How do you feel about this VAT? Personally, I don't think it's good for the economy. I don't think it's good for ordinary South Africans. I don't think that it's going to take anybody anywhere in terms of growth. I think it's going to potentially take South Africa into recession territories. It's not a good thing. This is austerity. This is austerity. The IMF and the World Bank want austerity. They want the debt to GDP ratio to go down. But it's been going up. And everyone keeps saying it will stabilize after this year. It will stabilize after this year. The Minister of Finance has been saying it will stabilize ever since he got that job. Every projection he's made, he's missed in terms of growth, etc. So why are we now all of a sudden giving 10 out of 10 marks to his projections and estimations? In fact, if you go back the last 15 years, I think all of the projections and estimates of the ANC and the ministers of finance have been missed. So why would this be the first one that is hit? So there's still going to be problems down the road.